Okay. Speakerphone. Here we are. Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back. Here's the phone. Okay. Just a little hoarse. Should be expected after Simchas Torah. We began something in the last class. It was 2 weeks ago, I think. So we have to make a little review. Something that's not necessarily related to right now. We're starting to learn Parshas Bereshis now. But it's related to the fact that we completed studying the whole Torah, at least in Torah Shebiksav, meaning in the written Torah. So now, in the Farbrengens that the Rebbe spoke, the night and the day of Simchas Torah, he started on Rosh Hashanah, continued it on Shabbos Chalamoid Sukkos, and the night and the day of Simchas Torah of the year 5752. He spoke about the idea of the uniqueness of the halachos of Torah Sheba'al Peh and their eternity, the laws of Torah Sheba'al Peh, and the importance of studying. That's really the studying of Rambam. And we began this last time. I only learned, I think, the first part. I'm just going to go over the Nakud. And then the Rebbe gave this out, edited. And it's incredible chidush and unbelievable novelty and understanding of the importance and the greatness of the Torah, and particularly the section of Torah called halacha. And that's something that we should understand and appreciate, and particularly relating to the application of halacha after Mashiach comes. In other words, will we always forever do mitzvahs? As we'll see, there's a question in it amongst the sages, but the Rebbe has his unique take on it that's really phenomenal. Okay. So now let's just, again, this is printed in the Sefer HaSichos Tafshin Nun Beis. I think maybe it's in Nun Aleph in the end, I'm not sure, because I have a different Sefer called Dvar Malchus, which is, so I would have to see in Sefer HaSichos if it's in the end of Nun Aleph or it's in Nun Beis. In any case, he's discussing over here, this that the Rambam says, that when Hashem gave the Torah, He gave Moshe Rabbeinu the written Torah. He instructed him exactly what to write. And in addition to that, He gave him a pirush, an explanation, a commentary. And the commentary are the laws of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, of the oral law that was given over orally from generation to generation. The Rambam was the one who was able to gather together from all of the Mishnah, the Talmud, and centralize in one location all the halacha, which means all the final, because in the Talmud there's a lot of debate and discussion. In the Mishnah there's a lot of arguments, different sages, different opinions. Rambam was able to gather together to a final conclusion of halacha, which means the actual conduct of a Jew regarding all 613 or 620 commandments and all the details of it. When I say 613 is the biblical commandments, 6 and another 7 rabbinic commandments, all the details of it. Rambam. Now again, you can't rely on Rambam only, because we follow today the Shulchan Aruch, which is written later than after the Rambam, and over there, not always is the Rambam's accepted conclusion the way we go, but still the only one who did a work like that, and he covers the entire Torah, all of Torah Sheba'al Peh, is all of the oral law, the commentary that God gave to the Torah in terms of its application towards mitzvah observance of every type of mitzvah that there is only the Rambam. And anyways, so the Rebbe says a very interesting thing, that the Gemara says that that a lot of the Torah will be canceled in the future. What does it mean it will be canceled? It means it will be canceled. It won't be studied. It won't be learned. It won't have the significance of Torah. And what is that? These are all the books, going back all the way to the Torah Shebiksav, besides the Chumash, all of the prophets, the writings, the prophets, there will come a time, not necessarily the coming of Mashiach, but later, that these will be nullified. The 5 books of Moses, that's for all of eternity. The Chumash is forever. Same is also the laws of Torah Sheba'al Peh. The laws of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Rambam actually states this in the laws of Purim, because the Rambam says that if even all the mitzvahs will be canceled and all the holidays will be canceled, Purim will not be canceled. But in Rambam, Moses says over there, he brings this idea that the laws of Torah Sheba'al Peh will not be canceled. They're here for all of eternity. So you see from here that there's a certain greatness to the laws of Torah Sheba'al Peh, of the oral law, like of laws of Rambam, that are they're in a sense godlier and therefore more permeant, more everlasting than the laws of than other parts of the Torah. So, today halacha, for example, halacha, you wouldn't be allowed to put a book of Rambam on top of a book of Joshua of Yeshua, or on top of Shmuel or Shoftim. You're not allowed to do that because this is holier. This is considered more the written law, the holiness in the writing itself. And here, this is oral law, so you can't put one on top of the other. But yet, in a sense, the Rambam, his laws, his book of laws, and really any book of halacha, has a certain godly energy and power that it's lasting forever, will never be canceled. That's, we say, dafka in this. And the reason for that is, so he brings over here in the parentheses, that even though in general it says, and the Rambam brings, that it is clear, mefurish b'Torah, that it's the mitzvahs of the Torah apply forever and ever, and there will never be a change in them. Torah is eternal. That's what these are the laws that the Rambam says in the laws of kings. No, sorry, this is in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, in the foundations of Torah. When the Rambam says that the davar bara mefurish b'Torah, that it's a mitzvah that stands forever and ever, and will never be changed, will never be diminished. You can't add to it. So this applies to Chumash, and it applies to Torah, to the halacha. It does not apply to the Nevi'im and the Ksuvim, to the prophets, to the writings, and it doesn't apply to the Talmud and Mishnah in the sense, which is the discussion in order to figure out, in order to sort out the various different possibilities and reach the conclusion of halacha. That's what it means to study Gemara. See, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe is the one who brought us the importance of the study of Rambam. And if you'll go into Chabad Shul between Mincha and Ma'ariv, when people have chance to study, you'll see people gather together studying Rambam. In other shuls across the Jewish world, people will study more Talmud, learn Gemara. I'm not saying in Chabadniks don't study Talmud, and I'm not saying others don't learn Rambam. But you see, this is primarily a difference. And the Chabadniks learn Rambam, because the Rebbe's institution. If you learn 3 chapters of Rambam a day, you're learning it well. You're pretty much occupied, unless you're a real Torah scholar, sits and learns Torah. And it's not much more time. You have to learn Chassidus too, and Chitas and things like that. Not much more to learn. So you're learning. That's the limud. So you have to appreciate something. The study of Gemara one day is not necessarily going to be here anymore. Why? So he says an interesting thing. Because the study of the Talmud, since it's a sorting out of halacha to figure out what halacha is, and once we have a complete, we've sorted it out, and we have complete clarification of what halacha is in every aspect of life, which is going to be the time Mashiach comes. Everything's going to be sorted out already. Then that element of Torah learning, which is the back and forth, the questions and the answers and the proving, this is the way it is, and this is what it means, and so on and so forth, all of that will possible that it will dissipate. It won't be there anymore. Instead, what will be? It will be occupied. We will have final halacha that we will have. We'll soon see. We'll have final halacha. But what other Torah? We will then learn Pnimius HaTorah. We will then learn the Tamei HaTorah, the reasons of the Torah, the reasons of the mitzvahs. In other words, now, let's understand something. After Mashiach comes, we're going to be learning much more Torah than we're learning now. That's what the Rambam characterizes as the days of Mashiach, a time when we won't have any distractions and everything else is going to be taken care of. So all Jews are going to be sitting in kollel all day, which means they're going to be sitting in study halls and yeshiva, learning all the time. But what are we going to be learning? We're going to be learning Tamei HaMitzvahs, Torah Chadasha, the new Torah that Mashiach is going to reveal, which is the secrets of the Torah, the reasons of the mitzvahs. That's going to be. So in other words, let me just put it in the words I was thinking. Now we have to figure out, we're busy for thousands of years, extrapolating from the document that God gave us what He wants. We're figuring out the what. What does God want? Once we've done figuring out the what, and again, that's something that's not only we figured out back then, you can say, well, we've done that already once you have the halach. No, because in every generation and every time there's new questions, new realities, new things come up in time, and we need to again consult halacha and the current rabbis and halachic authorities of every generation, who, based on the principles and the conclusions of previous generations, are able to take it and further apply halacha to as it is now. But there will be come a time, and I don't know how to deal with this one question. You can say, well, maybe when Mashiach will come, there'll be even more innovation, so there will be more questions of halacha, but I'm not exactly sure. But maybe once we have the Sanhedrin at such a level, we don't need the back and forth. We have immediate understanding of how we need to act. Again, I'm not dealing with that, but generally, it seems to be that that's the time, from the Sikha, that's what it seems like, is we will know the what. There's no question anymore on the what, so we don't need any more this back and forth discussion. Then we will begin to appreciate the why, which is something we don't know now. We don't know the reasons of mitzvahs. And the reasons of mitzvahs are obviously divine. They're completely esoteric, having to do with the inner realms of the divine will, of what it is about God, as we're soon going to see, that He wants and desires these mitzvahs, and that's what we're going to be studying. And that kind of study, we can probe infinitely forever and ever. So what is going to stay in Yiddishkeit, of Torah study? What is going to be left after Mashiach comes? We're going to have the document itself, which is the 5 Chumash. We're also going to have the final halacha that we need, because we need to know application of observance. So the final halacha, we're going to learn that. In addition to that, we're going to have the esoteric elements. We're going to learn Chassidus, which is the deeper inner elements of Torah, which is Chassidus enhanced, as it's going to be revealed to us after Mashiach comes. That's what we're going to learn. We want to call it Kabbalah, but it's really Chassidus, which is the life of Kabbalah. That's what we're going to do after Mashiach comes. That's going to be the Torah. And what's with the prophets? So the prophets, he brings over here, are all here to, if you summarize all the prophets, it's not new information. It's primarily the prophets came to either direct the Jewish people during any given time, certain things they needed to know, like Jeremiah was warning the Jewish people that the impending destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, they should do tshuva. Yonah, the prophet, was sent to go to Nineveh and warn them. So these are relating to certain events in which we needed particular guidance, and we had someone who communicated between God and us that can give us that guidance. And that is an all times, or many of the prophets were just coming to inspire observance. People were not observant; they were negligent. So the prophets were coming and saying what's going to happen to those who do observe, and the great rewards that are going to come, and so on and so forth, and warning of punishment and all that kind of thing. But it was all, so there's nothing really fundamentally new, in essence, coming from God. It's to inspire what we have already. And once Mashiach will come, we won't need that anymore. So that's going to be gone. So the only study that's going to be is these three things. This is the idea. And the Rebbe concluded, and this is what we learned last time, that this idea that Torah Shabal Peh, which is, again, the laws of Torah. Now, when I say laws of Torah, again, let's be sure about that. We mean Shulchan Aruch, which is the laws of the code of Jewish law, which will apply then. But if we want to see the law as it applies to all of observance, there's only one book, which is the book of Rambam. That's all of observance. That is going to apply forever and ever. And where do we, to see that, he says, it's also emphasized in the fact that the Rambam concludes his Sefer with the laws of Mashiach. The last two chapters in Rambam, a Mishnah Torah, is about the laws of Mashiach himself and the Messianic period, the time of Mashiach. Now, simply it's because that's what happens in the end of time. But there's a deeper reason. Because it's in the days of Mashiach that we're going to appreciate the book of Rambam. The Rambam is finally going to be appreciated to the fullest extent when Mashiach comes. When? Now he's also appreciated. Every yeshiva learns Rambam, and everybody wants to probe. When you're in Talmudic study, Rambam is like people spend, so much of their study time investigating and analyzing the tiny nuances of Rambam. Yeah, okay. Because Rambam is amongst the great interpreters, if we can say, of Talmud, even though he's not interpreting Talmud, but he's writing halacha. But from the way he brings a halacha, we can see how he interpreted the Talmud. So we study, we analyze, but we don't really see the uniqueness of Rambam. The great uniqueness of Rambam is going to be when Mashiach comes, when the rest of the Torah is canceled, and the Rambam remains standing, which means the laws of Torah Shabal Peh. In the days of Mashiach, that's when we're going to appreciate the value of the laws of Torah Shabal Peh. That's why the Rambam concludes with these halachos of that time period that is going to fully reveal the power and the greatness of the book of Rambam that the Rambam has given us. Okay, this is what we learned last time. Now we continue in Perek Beis. He says, let's understand a little better the eternity of the laws of Torah, as we say, that the halachos of Torah, they're going to last forever. He asks a simple question. We know, how can we say that? We know that amongst the sages, there was a great split between two schools. There was the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. And these two groups, these were two academies producing thousands of students, had a different tradition, meaning the way they studied and the way they learned, the way they received from their teachers. And they had many disputes regarding so many of the laws of the Torah. Generally, Beis Shammai is much stricter, always comes, their application of the law is always on a much stricter level, higher standard, so to speak, and the school of Hillel is more lenient. In most of these disputes, we today follow the custom, or follow the law, the opinion of Beis Hillel. And that's the way it is today. Halacha ke Beis Hillel, besides in very few things that it's not that way, but in general, it's always, the law is always like Hillel. Well, and that's when Mashiach will come. It says that, I think this idea, it's a mystical concept taken from the Zohar. He brings from Migdash Melech the Zohar, and he brings also Likutei Torah. Korach, I think, means the Alter Rebbe. I'm not sure if he means Arizal. Anyways, this is a concept that is known in Jewish mysticism, that after the coming of Mashiach, the law is going to be like Beis Shammai. The law is not going to be like Hillel. If that's the case, how can we say that the laws of Torah, which, as we said before, means the book of Rambam, or Shulchan Aruch as we have it today, is eternal and is going to last forever, when we know that a time will come when our conduct is going to change and we're going to have to edit the whole Shulchan Aruch and Rambam. Almost every Rambam doesn't tell you what Beis Hillel holds, what Beis Shammai holds. Rambam just tells you final law, but he's following the opinion of Beis Hillel. So we're going to have to edit, delete, probably, a major section. If you can say, I don't know how much percent, 20, 30% of the laws of the way they are, and make an edit and change it to the more stricter application that's going to be after Mashiach comes. We shouldn't worry about the stricter application. We're going to be far more enhanced human beings with a much greater capacity and with less Yetzer Hara. So we're going to be able to run things by a much stricter standards, and it won't be a problem. Quite on the contrary, we're gonna thrive on it. But in any case, how can we say that that this book, the book of Rambam, which I'm holding right over here, this book, and actually, this is one volume, but how can we say this book's going to last forever when these laws are not applicable after Mashiach comes in many aspects? Because the law is like Beis Hillel. That's the question. To make the question even stronger, when we say the law is going to change after Mashiach comes, that's possible that's going to happen immediately after Mashiach comes. But then there's a later period, after the resurrection of the dead, which the resurrection of the dead is a period that happens for most people. There are selected tzaddikim, righteous ones, who are going to be resurrected immediately at the coming of Mashiach. But then there are most of the Jewish people that are going to experience the resurrection at a later time. And when exactly? It seems from many places 40 years later. Which is going to usher in a new era, an era called the second Messianic era. The first Messianic era and the second Messianic era. Which is second time of Mashiach, the second Tekufa of the days of Mashiach, is one of this. But there is a strong opinion in the Talmud that says that after Mashiach comes, mitzvahs, commandments, are going to cease to be. All commandments are going to, we can say, expire. They're not going to be enforced anymore, simply. That means observance, as we know it, is going to stop. That's what it seems like. So the question then comes, how can we say that Rambam laws of Torah are eternal, they're forever, when it says specifically mitzvahs betelis la'asad lo, that mitzvahs are going to be stopped when Mashiach comes? Let's understand that idea. The Gemara says mitzvahs betelis, mitzvahs can be, it means practical observance of mitzvahs. The Gemara actually relates to it in this question. And that is, only the Talmud can discuss such a thing. Are you allowed to bury a person, obviously a deceased person, with garments that are shatnez? Okay, one of the prohibitions in the Torah is you're not allowed to wear shatnez. What is shatnez? A mixture of wool and linen together. Okay, we're not allowed to wear that. Question is, are you allowed to use it as shrouds, as the tachrichim, as the clothing that are for a mace? The Gemara has a question. If one piece of linen got lost in wool, and now you ruined it because you can't find it, you're not allowed to wear it. The question is, can you make it, at least not to throw it out? Can you use it for tachrichim, for the shrouds, for the dead person? So what's the question? When a person is dead, they are not obligated in commandments. There's no obligation. Obviously, say they can't command it, but let's say in a case like this, obviously a dead person can't be obligated in a commandment because he can't do anything. Yeah, but for example, in a case when he's wearing something, he or she is on the corpse, on their body, they're wearing something so that they don't have to do something. If they're obligated in mitzvahs, then those around them have to assure that they're not wearing something that's not kosher clothing. Okay, they can't eat not kosher, but they can wear not kosher. And if they would be obligated in mitzvahs, they would be not allowed to. So we say no. This everybody agrees. Dead people are not obligated in mitzvahs, and therefore not in the prohibitions either. There's no problem while they're dead to have non-kosher clothing, to have the mixture of wool and linen. Question is, we believe in resurrection. When they will be resurrected, their bodies will come back to life in the clothing that they were wearing. You might say, well, by that time, there's nothing to be left of the clothing. Well, what happens if you bury someone and Mashiach comes tomorrow? The resurrection happens very close by. So the clothing might still be intact. So if that's the case, and their clothing is shatnez, are you allowed to announce it? The Talmud says, according to this opinion, Rabbi Yosef says you're allowed to. And the reason why you're allowed to is because mitzvahs betelis la'asid lavai. That mitzvahs are going to be no. It says the Gemara brings it. You're allowed to make tachrichem. Rabbi Yosef is the one who derives from here. So you see from here that mitzvahs are not going to apply after Mashiach comes. The commandments. That means that because when the person comes alive again, he's obligated to mitzvahs. No mitzvahs. No one is obligated anymore. So if that's the case, if the mitzvahs don't apply, so why would the halachas apply? Why do I need the book of Rambam if the whole thing is irrelevant? Rambam teaches you all the laws of shatnez. After Mashiach comes, there is no shatnez. You're allowed to wear shatnez, not after Mashiach comes. After the resurrection, you're allowed to wear shatnez. If we're allowed to wear shatnez, why do I need the laws of shatnez? And the same as everything else. If we're allowed to eat non-kosher food, why do I need the laws of kosher? If the mitzvah is not applicable, then the laws are not applicable. So how can Rambam say, and how do we know this whole concept and the idea that mitzvahs of the Torah is eternal? And the Rambam says the la'ad, la'netzach netzachim, they're forever and ever. When we, number one, we know that the way we're going to observe the mitzvah is in the days of Mashiach going to be different, because we're not going to follow, even in the first period, we're not going to follow Beis Hillel's view. We're going to follow the views of Shammai. So again, you'll have to edit all these laws. But even more so, the whole halachas won't apply the second period. So what does it mean? It will be l'nadla forever. Now one can argue, the Rebbe wants to say, that maybe when it says it's forever, what it really means is that human beings today's days or in the passage of time can't tamper with mitzvahs and say, well, it's not applicable. These are outdated commandments applicable for people who lived in the old mindset back then, but today that we live in a modern world, we can change. Like, for example, the other reform I've tried to say, or conservative, is that you can take certain laws and apply. We do things in the spirit of the law, but not in the technical element of the law. These things don't apply today. So, for example, I can decide today how to keep Shabbos. That Shabbos doesn't mean that I have to keep away from these 39 prohibitions. I can do my own way of keeping my Shabbos, just that I'm resting and so on and so forth. Since it's easier, it maybe doesn't take any toil, and maybe it used to take so hard for me to do things, but today we can do them all automatically. So then these things don't apply. So that we're saying, as long as we don't have Mashiach, as long as we're not in the, we have to do mitzvahs exactly like we were instructed at Sinai. That's what we mean. Mitzvahs are eternal. Eternal mean for the entire time period that we are doing the repair work that needs to be done in the world. But once the repair is over, we're done. The world is already fixed. And we enter into the next phase. What's the next phase? La'asid lavai. The next phase is called, the future phase, is called the tomorrow. The morrow. What's the tomorrow? It's the time that we receive the reward. The sages say, Hayom la'asosam. Today is the time of action. Tomorrow we receive the reward. So maybe in the period of when we receive the reward, it was never included in the period of observance. So eternity of mitzvahs observance is referring to it's eternal within it's in full force and unchangeable within the period of when initially the program was given. But once the program is completed, then maybe it doesn't apply. The Rebbe says that someone might want to argue that, but he's not happy, and he doesn't want to accept that. And he says, because if we dig a little deeper and understand the deeper reason of why it says that the mitzvahs are eternal and forever, and we appreciate it, then we cannot accept that mitzvahs are going to be stopped The mitzvahs are going to terminate because the world has already reached its tikkun, the world has reached its repair, and therefore there's no need anymore to apply the repairing process. But mitzvahs are, in a way, we apply it to the world and fix the world through it. So, but once the world is fixed where we don't need it, it says, but if you appreciate the eternity of mitzvahs, as Chassidus says, in a deeper level, then we understand that they have to last forever because it is completely unrelated to the condition of the world. Chassidus explains the reason why mitzvahs are forever. It's not because mitzvahs happen to be that God promised they won't change. It's one of the things God told us. It's just that rather that mitzvahs are essentially, inherently unchangeable. What do we mean by that? We know mitzvahs are divine, obviously. God is forever, so his mitzvahs are forever. But we can say, not really the case. God created a tree. It's his creation. If God is forever, the tree should be forever because the tree is his creation. And the answer is no. He is forever, but he desired a tree and he didn't want the tree to be forever. He wanted the tree to last for as long as a tree should last. So you can say the same thing with a mitzvah. He has a will, and the will is for whatever he wants. Okay, maybe the Torah tells us that the mitzvah is a permanent will, but why can't we hypothetically say that God could have changed, that the mitzvahs could one day terminate? Why is Rambam so insistent that mitzvahs have to be forever? And the reason is because when you want something and your desire for something is because of some result that you want. Because when I want something and I don't really want that, I want that as a means to an end for something else, then as soon as I reach my desired result, then I can drop it. Then I don't need it anymore. Right? It's everything. Anything that we want, we have a lot of wants that we want. We don't inherently want them. We want these things so that because through this we will get to whatever we need to get to. Right? If I want to buy a house, I'm looking for a good real estate broker. And I might be very into it and asking everybody and searching and making and doing, and right? Because I really want to find a good person to help me buy the house. Or I'm looking for whatever. Does that mean that I want the real estate broker in my life forever? No. I need them as a means to an end. Once I have my house, goodbye. I'm looking for a shadchan to help me, right? I'm looking for a good shadchan to help me find my soulmate, for instance. And once I have my soulmate, goodbye shadchan. I need you very much during the time. I need a doctor for healing. Doesn't mean I'm getting married to the doctor forever. Obviously, we understand that. So if God, so the question is, when God wants mitzvahs, are mitzvahs here to repair the world? If mitzvahs are here to repair the world, then once the world is repaired, you don't need the mitzvah anymore. Goodbye mitzvah. If the whole reason why God wants charity is because the world is very selfish, and so God gives us the mitzvah of charity so we can undo our selfishness and become more godlike and more giving. And then what? Once we achieve that, once all humans learn how to be kind and giving, we don't need anymore the commandment of being charitable and giving. Or let's say differently, as long as there are rich and there are poor, we need the rich people to take care of the poor. So you need the commandment of charity. When everybody's going to have whatever they need, because there's going to be plenty, like in the days of Mashiach, no need for the charity anymore. That would indicate that the whole role of mitzvahs is secondary to the world, or rather, they grow from the world and humanity and everything about the world. So now the mitzvahs are serving this need. When we say the mitzvahs are eternal, what we're really saying is that God does not want these things because of something, but rather we're saying that God wants these things because he inherently wants them. He inherently wants Shabbos. He inherently wants tzedakah. Not because the world needs them, just because this is who he is and what he is. Now, hypothetically, even if there was never a world, he wants tzedakah. What does tzedakah mean if there is no world? What does Shabbos mean if there is no world and we're to rest? I can't tell you. I don't know what that means. And the same is with every mitzvah. He wants kosher even if there will never be milk and meat. He still wants that milk and meat should not mix together. It's essentially abhorrent to him. Despicable, he does not want those two together. It's something about him, and he's eternal. So this mitzvah is eternal. Now, he created a world in which he can actually facilitate all these eternal desires and wants and give it application in our reality as well. And as a byproduct, when the world lives by these mitzvahs, the world becomes perfect. The world too becomes perfect, which is great. But that's not the end of the mitzvah. Okay. Oh, great. Look what happened to us when we do mitzvahs. We become so refined, so elevated. That's not because we become so godlike and therefore God stops doing them. No, we exist for that, not it exists for this. The world exists for that. So you can't say once the world assimilated it, the mitzvah should be canceled. If that's the case, then we're saying that mitzvahs are inherently eternal. They exist forever. If mitzvahs inherently are eternal, then we have to say that we can't say that this is a program that runs for a certain period of time, and then the program runs once it's not needed. Mitzvahs are forever. Then we have the question: why are the sages saying that mitzvahs will be canceled after the resurrection? Seems like it can't work. How can mitzvahs both be eternal, and it's God's will, and it's an essential will, and it's not a means to an end? God will always want tzedakah, and yet we say that there will come a time when there is no mitzvah of tzedakah. There's no mitzvah to give charity. But hold it, God wants it forever, and that's what the mitzvah is. It's God's desire. How can it be that we don't that if something is wrong? If anything, we become more godly, we become closer to God, and therefore relate more to his commandment. And if this is something important to him forever, so that should be that way forever by us as well. So how does it work? And by the way, parenthetically, the Rebbe brings in the footnotes, there are those Jewish thinkers and philosophers that took that did not accept this Rambam's teachings that the Torah is mitzvahs have to be forever. The great philosopher, the Ikrim, writes, he wrote a book called Sefer Ikrim, I forgot his name. Anyways, he takes on the Rambam. He says, I don't get it. Why do we have to say that these mitzvahs, why do we have to say that we have such a stubborn God and he wants these mitzvahs forever? It doesn't make any sense, he says. I mean, mitzvahs have its purpose, he says, to do certain repairs. It's for the need of, because he's coming from the perspective that the mitzvahs are for the need of the world. And he says, so what would be, hypothetically, he says, what would be wrong to say that as the world progresses, the mitzvahs would change? Now, obviously, we can't decide that. But we couldn't, the humans can't decide it, because as long as God gave us this commandment, we have to keep on doing it exactly like he commanded us. But who is to say that a prophet should come at a later time, if we know the prophet is valid and true? Or let's say Moshe comes back. You say, okay, no one could contradict Moshe, but Moshe himself comes back. And he tells us, he spoke again to God, and he said, you know what, not important anymore. You were doing so-and-so all this time, now it's not important anymore. And he says, of course, what should be, why can't it change? Why does it have to be a principle in Torah that Torah can't change? He actually says, when it comes to physical needs of people, so the taking care of nutrition. So he says you give a child different food than you give a teenager, and a teenager should eat differently than an elderly people. Everybody eats according to what fits their needs. And the Rambam has all his laws of medicine. He describes for young people this is not good, for elder people this is good, so on and so forth. As our bodies change, our needs change. So as the world matures or changes or whatever, it could be different mitzvahs. That's what Ikram, but Rambam says no. And Chassidus sides with the Rambam, because Chassidus explains this very idea. Mitzvahs are not here as a means to an end to improve the world. Because then the mitzvahs, really, the significance of the mitzvahs wouldn't be bigger than the world. And if the worlds are finite, then the significance of the mitzvahs are finite, and that's not what mitzvahs are. Mitzvahs are Hashem's essential, inner, absolute will that has nothing to do with the world, which happens to be that it's also applied to the world. But if that's the case, then we need to understand, and the eternity of mitzvahs have to be forever. So how do we say that what? Mitzvahs are going to be betelos when Mashiach will come. So I'm just going to say the kernel of the answer, and Be'ez Hashem in the next class we're going to discuss it at greater length. The Rebbe makes an incredible chiddush over here, a great novel idea. And he wants to differentiate when we say that the mitzvahs are going to be stopped when Mashiach after the resurrection. It doesn't mean that we will stop observing, we will stop living by these laws. We will forever, ever, ever live a Jewish life, exactly and far more Jewish than what we're doing now, meaning full, complete observance. We will never, ever mix milk and meat together. We will never, ever, tear off a leaf from a tree on Shabbos. Right? We will never light a fire on Shabbos. We will always have this observance. For how long? Forever. For a gazillion years. As long as creation will exist, and as we'll see soon, it will really be forever. But it won't be a mitzvah. What it means as a mitzvah is it won't be a commandment. A commandment means we kind of have two options. I can either do it or not do it, and I'm doing it because you're commanding me. It will be spontaneously. We will live that way because that's the way we will be when Mashiach will come. We will have so ingrained and assimilated God's will to the point that we will stop feeling it as a commandment. It will just become natural to us to live, and otherwise we will not be even able to live. Just like there are certain things that naturally we cannot do today because they're just, we can't do that. Our nature doesn't allow that to do that. And this is even more, it will probably be even more compelling than that. So we will live a mitzvah life. And the Rebbe says the real reason is because we will become, what's a mitzvah? A mitzvah means a commander. I can only command someone who is not me, and therefore has a choice to do their own thing, do things the way they want, and I'm commanding you and telling you, please, or not please, command. The one who has the force to command doesn't have to say please, just says do so. You have to listen. But the main idea is that we're independent beings other than God, and we have kind of what we could say our life and our choices, and we can choose to heed his command, to listen to him, or God forbid we can choose not to listen. So we have a choice. When Mashiach will come and our consciousness will expand, and we will reach as a result of the mitzvahs that we've done now, there's a certain point when we will cease to feel, and especially by the time of the resurrection, we will cease to feel as if we are creatures and beings other than him. We will just be completely integrated in him, in his reality, in his truth. And just like God does not work on Shabbos, and God does not wear wool and linen, whatever that means in the abstract of the abstract of the abstract of the abstract to God. And just like that very God, if he wants to, if he would contract himself and lower himself down and into a body, so to speak, and decide that he is now physical, wouldn't put on wool and linen together because that's against who he is, and he would not eat milk and meat together, and he would not eat lobster. I mean, again, let's understand, all of this has a spiritual meaning and a physical application. But just like God would not do these things because these are things that he essentially desires out of his essence of who he is, we will also be that way without needing to be commanded. So if I go to someone for, I'll give you an example. If I go to China and I'm being hosted, or people like students exchange, and I go live in someone's house for a month in China, and it's a Chinese family, and I'm used to eating with a fork, and they eat with chopsticks. So I will eat, they will tell me, in our house over here, we don't eat with forks, we eat with chopsticks. They can command me to do so. When you're in this house, do so. Well, the children in that house are not eating with forks, they're eating with chopsticks, not because they're commanded. That's just who they are. That's what their parents taught them. They don't know it. This is their very way of eating. It's their, and the same is the opposite. People come from there, and every family, people have certain customs, a certain way of doing things that is just ingrained in your very being. This is the way it's done in this house. This is the way it's done in this family. But you see it in different cultures even more. If you're joining and you're going so then you could be commanded. You don't have to live here, but if you're living in my house, I don't want you to eat with a fork. I want you to eat with chopsticks because that's the way we do it over here. You feel that you're commanded, and then maybe you'll sneak. When they're not looking, you'll sneak a fork in, or whatever. You won't eat with the chopsticks. Well, that's the way it is today. Today's days where it's we and our Creator are two separate things. So therefore, we have to be commandment in mitzvahs. That's the meaning that mitzvahs, that the laws of Torah will be forever. We will forever be, but they won't be anymore in a state of a mitzvah. They will be. And we'll see how that applies then to the story with the application of the person buried. Then how can we bury someone with the shatnez? Because if they'll get up in the resurrection, they'll be wearing wool and linen. How can they be? Okay, we'll discuss that, Be'ezrat Hashem, in our continuation. Okay, everyone, be well. I'm going to be away next week, Wednesday. So please tune in of when the class is going to be. I'm going away for 2 weeks from now. I know I should be back, but I'm going to be away next week, Wednesday. So I have to maybe figure out how to give the class maybe from long distance. Okay, take care, everyone. Hopefully Mashiach will be here already, and we won't have to teach anymore. Everybody will know. We will all, as it says, know everything. Everyone be well.